Good morning. It really is a pleasure to be here and to have a chance to ask you some questions and listen to you talk and put it on record. I was reading about you before I came, and I read where one of your earliest instructors had met Abraham Lincoln.
Right.
That's quite a connection.
Yeah.
Do you remember him? The instructor, not Abraham Lincoln.
Sure. He was, I don't remember his first name. His last name was Donaker, but he was a combination carpenter and farm person that my father hired. It was 1942. The war was on, and my father could only hire very old men, because the other men were all working.
Mm-hmm.
And me, I was 12 years old, so this fellow was teaching me farming and other things. And yeah, I think he was about in his late 80s, or very late 80s at the time.
He'd have to be.
Yeah. But he said that when he was 6 years old, Abraham Lincoln came through this area on a campaign swing, and his mother held him up and he shook hands with Abraham Lincoln. So
Now, when you say this area, you mean right here in Pennsylvania?
yeah, in southeastern Pennsylvania, near Allentown. Emmaus is a suburb of Allentown.
And you've been here all your life?
Well, I was actually born in New York City, but my parents, I was born in 1930, but my parents moved here in 1930, about 5 months after I was born, and I've lived here ever since. And not only that, but I went to school here, to college at Lehigh University in Bethlehem. So I've never really, the longest I've ever been away from this area has been, I think, 6 weeks in 59 years.
That's impressive.
Yeah.
Before we leave that period of time in your life, though, I wanted to ask you about the Depression years. Was your father's income from the farm?
No, he and his brother had started a small electrical equipment manufacturing company making switches and extension cords, connectors, different parts in New York, and they moved that to Emmaus because there had been a silk industry here which went bad, and there were a lot of empty silk mill buildings, and the town offered him one of these buildings free if they would move here, which is the inducement that got him here.
That was fairly progressive back then.
And so during the Depression, I'm sure we didn't suffer nearly as much as a lot of other people, but the business, of course, was terrible. And I know there were times when my father couldn't pay the rent. We moved 4 or 5 times during the Depression. At the very bottom, we lived up on the mountain nearby in a summer cabin that had a fireplace in it, and for one winter. But then when it was all over, my father paid back all the rent that he hadn't paid during the Depression. So, but
did you always have a garden?
Well, we really didn't do much gardening. And my father actually was born in the Lower East Side of New York, and he was brought up in an area which is the most, I understand, is the most densely populated area ever in the history of the world. Like the Lower East Side, these tenement houses, the people were just sleeping in rows, and there were a number of stories high, so it was very compact humanity. But he was interested in plants, and he would go up on the roof and grow plants in pots, and he loved plants in that environment. And he actually had bought a farm in Connecticut in the 20s for $10. He paid $10
for the farm
in Ridgefield, Connecticut, which is now like the most expensive place, and they, of course, paid it off. They only had it a few years, but they did it. I don't know if they did gardening there, but they really liked rural life. My father and his brother and my mother and so forth. During the Depression, I don't really recall him gardening, but he wanted a farm, and he bought what is now the original, we call it the old farm, the Organic Gardening Experimental Farm, in 1941, and he immediately went into gardening. But what really drove him, his interest, first of all, was health. He came from a large family, and he considered himself sort of the weak person in the family.
He didn't have good health? Or?
He did not have, it's hard to say, what is good health? I don't really know. But he was rejected for the Army in World War I for some, I think for eyesight. He had problems with his vision. Doctors said he had a heart murmur, which today they would, I'm sure, say, forget it, it's a temporary thing. But he felt, in those days they said, oh, your heart doesn't sound right. They didn't know much. It really was traumatic to him. So he spent his early life experimenting with different health routines, vegetarianism. He read all the, like, Bernard McFadden material of the early 20s and 30s. And he was always trying different diets. And he also was publishing magazines. Rodale Press was founded in 1930, the year that they moved to Emmaus. But they published other things, humor magazines, and then he had a series of digests. Reader's Digest was real big in those days, so there were a lot of imitators. And he had 4 or 5 of the imitators of Reader's Digest, one of which was called Fact Digest, which was very successful. But he had a health magazine then called Health Guide, little digest. And but his interest in organic farming he was like primed for health. He said that there's somehow the American way of eating, growing food is not healthy.
Was he encouraged in this by his parents, or was this something that he truly pioneered on his own?
Well, he was kind of a loner. His father died early. He never got along with his father anyway. His mother was alive. She didn't, I don't think she played a part in this. It's hard to say. I'm sure he had people who influenced him, but it was mostly through his reading and through attending lectures and whatever. But he read Sir Albert Howard's book, and he made the statement, which I'll never forget. He said, it hit me like a ton of bricks. It, like, everything came together. Here was a man who said farming needs to be done in a natural way because it's healthier for the environment, for the land, for the crops. The crops are better, the food is better.